Greetings, Ben Murray here with another edition of SaaS Metrics School. Today, talking about CARR. And in my opinion, not all CARR is created equally. So we'll talk about CARR, SaaS valuations, the layers of CARR, and then attaching retention to CARR. So first, what is CARR? Because this gets tricky because a lot of the definitions around ARR are different. And again, ARR, annual recurring revenue. I've talked to even private equity companies who just throw everything in there. Everyone defines ARR a little bit differently. Obviously, ARR, traditionally subscription based revenue. Now we've got variable revenue streams, usage, transaction, variable or consumption, etc., going into variable revenue, which people are counting as ARR. And we'll talk about that. Then we got managed services, recurring people-powered revenue. Now, should that be in CARR? Then, of course, we've got one-time professional services revenue. Definitely, absolutely not in ARR or CARR. So first, what is contracted annual recurring revenue? Well, this is a forward-looking revenue number when really we're trying to estimate the maximum revenue size of recurring revenue in our company. So of course, if we look at our SaaS P&L, we take our MRR off our P&L, multiply by 12. That's our current, you could say ARR right now. Oftentimes we look at the end of the year, do that. That's called the exit rate going into that next fiscal year. But with CARR, we're trying to estimate the maximum value of our revenue. So again, we're starting off of P&L data. So looking at that subscription revenue times 12. And again, maybe we have variable revenue in there, but let's just go with the subscription revenue scenario. So subscription revenue off our P&L, multiply by that by 12, that gives us our ARR base. Then we're going to add on top of that everything that's been contracted that has not pushed through our revenue streams yet. So if we just signed that new customer for 100,000 a year, that's not in our revenue yet. If we just expanded a customer for 50,000, that's not in revenue. Maybe we have some contraction that's coming up, not in our revenue stream. And then maybe we have indicated churn. Now there are some different thoughts around churn and when should you include that. But for me as a CFO, if I know that someone has indicated churn and say that's a $50,000 contract, I'm going to throw that in CARR as well because I feel like that's going to mislead folks if I know that information. So that's CARR at a basic level. Now, CARR is often used in SaaS valuation discussions, especially upon exits, say private equity, because a lot of, we can really ballpark our valuation around our ARR number. So if we're at 10 million ARR, and if we're trying to go for an 8x valuation for 80 million in valuation, we're looking to maximize that ARR number because if we just signed a contract, well, that we feel like we should get credit for that because it's executed, it's legally binding, and that's going to eventually flow into our revenue number. So often used in SaaS valuation discussions. Obviously, people have different definition around CARR. As long as it's a fair definition, I think that's a good valuation discussion. Now, I talk about CARR being created equally because think about our annual recurring revenue. We could have subscription revenue, but what if we have variable revenue? What if we have usage, processing, consumption? Should that be included in our ARR number? Now, in bookings, that's a whole different story. But as a CFO with CARR, yeah, of course, I would like to take credit for variable revenue in my CARR number. Now, what if that variable revenue has really poor retention? What if it's running, say, 50% gross revenue retention? Well, that's where I say that's not really equal to my subscription revenue stream that may be running 90% annual gross revenue retention. So if you're going to build up your CARR number, I suggest including each layer so we have full transparency around our CARR number. So if we have 5 million of subscription revenue right now, and then we've got, say, 2 million of variable revenue coming from different products, that we attach a retention number to each of those layers. So it's very clear if we're building up to a CARR number of 10 million, well, maybe I have really good quality CARR that's running 80 plus 90% gross revenue retention, but maybe I have some CARR layers that are running 50, 60. Well, I need to know that because my valuation around those layers are not going to be equal to the other layers. So again, when we think about our CARR buildup, let's do it by layer, by each revenue stream, and then also maybe by major product lines and the retention attached to that, because that's going to provide full transparency. And then, of course, on top of CARR, we don't know retention for those just executed contracts, but that's going to be kind of the icing on the cake for our CARR number. So I think it's important to understand CARR, the different layers, the retention attached to those layers, and then how are we really defining ARR? Because this question is going to come up if board discussions, investor discussions, especially exit discussions. So again, not all CAR created equally. So dig into your CAR. What are those layers and what are the retention? Thanks.